In today's episode, we're diving into the most disturbing snake encounters ever recorded. Let's begin with the first story. September 3rd, 2016 began with a gentle mist hanging over the rice paddies of Chiang Rai, Thailand. The early harvest season had brought the entire community to the fields, including 13-year-old Molly Ratanpong and her grandparents. Molly was the pride of her family, bright, hard-working, and unfailingly kind. Unlike many children her age who dreamed of escaping to Bangkok, Molly loved the rhythm of rural life. She excelled in school, particularly mathematics and science. Her teachers often told her parents she could earn a university scholarship if she continued her diligent work. This particular harvest had begun early due to concerns about approaching storms. The entire village had mobilized, with families working from dawn until dusk to bring in the crop that would sustain them through the coming year. As the sun began to disappear, Molly's grandparents called for her to stop her work, but she refused to. She wanted to continue, which her family agreed to, knowing she never got home late. Molly set down her basket of cut rice and headed toward the canal that separated their family's paddy from the neighboring field. The narrow waterway was lined with thick vegetation, a mix of tall grasses, bamboo, and tangled shrubs that provided habitat for the frogs, snakes, and small mammals that were part of the rice field ecosystem. As she approached the spot where she'd left her sickle, the fading light made it difficult to see clearly. Molly stepped carefully along the muddy bank, mindful of her footing on the slippery surface. She reached down to grab the sickle, her fingers just brushing the handle. What Molly couldn't see in the gathering dusk was the massive reticulated python that had been watching her approach. The 16-foot snake had been hiding in the thick brush along the canal, its patterned skin providing perfect camouflage among the shadows and vegetation. Reticulated pythons are among the world's longest snakes, capable of growing over 20 feet in length. Though primarily nocturnal, they hunt whenever opportunity presents itself. Their distinctive net-like pattern of scales creates perfect camouflage in dappled light, and their incredible strength allows them to subdue prey many times their weight. Unlike venomous snakes that kill with toxins, pythons kill by constriction, tightening their powerful muscles around the victim's chest each time they exhale, gradually preventing the lungs from expanding. Contrary to popular belief, pythons don't crush prey but rather cause death through cardiac arrest by preventing normal blood circulation. As Molly bent to retrieve her sickle, the python struck with explosive force. There was no warning, no rattle, no hiss, just the lightning-fast lunge of powerful muscles that had evolved over millions of years to capture prey. Molly, small for her age at just under 5 feet tall and weighing about 85 pounds, represented potential prey for the large python. In the dim twilight, the snake may have mistaken her for a smaller animal, or perhaps it was simply opportunistic. The snake's head hit Molly with such force that she was knocked off balance, falling backward into the muddy bank. Before she could scream, the python's body was wrapping around her torso, powerful coils tightening with each of Molly's panicked breaths. Her initial cry was cut short as the constriction forced air from her lungs. The python's grip tightened methodically, not crushing bones as commonly believed, but preventing Molly from drawing breath, slowly suffocating her while cutting off blood flow to her brain. With each heartbeat, the coils tightened further. Molly struggled desperately, her hands clawing at the muscular coils, her feet kicking at the muddy bank. But the python's strength was overwhelming, its grip implacable. The snake began dragging her toward the denser vegetation, an instinctual behavior when capturing prey. Back at the main field, Molly's grandparents finished packing their tools, assuming their granddaughter had already started walking home ahead of them. It wasn't until they returned to the village and spoke with the neighbors that they found out Molly had not returned home yet. The explanation sent a chill through him. Molly was never late, never irresponsible. Something was wrong. They immediately gathered flashlights and called neighbors. Within minutes, a search party had formed. Men and women from nearby homes, armed with lights and calling Molly's name as they retraced the path from the rice fields. They reached the family's paddy and spread out, searching methodically. Molly's grandpa headed straight for the canal where his daughter had reportedly gone to retrieve her sickle. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the muddy bank. The sickle lay where Molly had spotted it, partially submerged in the mud at the water's edge. Nearby, the ground showed signs of a struggle: disturbed mud, flattened grass, and a single sandal that Molly's grandpa recognized as his granddaughter's. The search party converged on the spot, their lights scanning the area. One of the men, a former hunter named Chai, noticed the drag marks leading into the thick vegetation along the canal. With machetes, the men began cutting through the dense undergrowth, following the disturbed path. They had gone about 20 feet when Chai's flashlight illuminated a scene from a nightmare. The massive python lay coiled around Molly's motionless form. Unlike sensationalized stories, the snake had not yet begun to swallow her. Pythons typically wait hours after a kill before beginning to consume large prey. Instead, it remained tightly wrapped around her body, still applying pressure even though Molly had already succumbed to asphyxiation. Molly's grandpa's anguished cry echoed across the fields. The men rushed forward, machetes raised. The python, disturbed by the lights and noise, attempted to retreat deeper into the vegetation, still gripping its prey. Chai, acting on instinct and rage, brought the machete down on the snake's neck, severing its head with a single powerful stroke. The massive body continued to writhe and coil for several minutes, a reflex action that continued even after death. When they finally managed to unwrap the python's massive coils from Molly's body, it was clear she had been dead for at least an hour. Her face was peaceful, almost as if she were sleeping, but her lips had turned blue from lack of oxygen. News of the tragedy spread quickly through the province. By morning, local wildlife authorities had arrived to investigate, confirming that the python was 18 feet long. It was large but not exceptional for the species, which can reach over 20 feet in the wild. Experts noted that the snake was healthy and in its prime, likely having established a territory along the canal where small mammals came to drink. The incident sent shockwaves through the community. Farmers were advised to work in pairs and avoid the canal areas during dawn and dusk when pythons are most active. Wildlife biologists explained that such attacks were extremely rare. Reticulated pythons, despite their size, typically avoid humans and prefer natural prey like monkeys, pigs, and deer. The attack on Molly was an anomaly, a tragic intersection of human and animal territories in a changing landscape where agricultural development increasingly encroached on wildlife habitat. Molly's tragic death serves as a sobering reminder that even in areas where humans have cultivated the land for generations, wild predators still maintain territories and hunting patterns that occasionally intersect with human activity, often with devastating consequences. August 19, 2014 was a humid day in Ecuador's Esmeraldas province. The rainforest canopy dripped with moisture from an early morning shower, creating a symphony of water droplets hitting leaves. For Ramon Estevez, this was the perfect backdrop for his eco-tourism adventure. The 45-year-old Spanish accountant had always been drawn to wild places. His modest apartment back home was filled with souvenirs from his travels. A tribal mask from Papua New Guinea, a ceremonial knife from the Amazon, photographs of mountain summits from 4 continents. This 3-week journey through Ecuador's most biodiverse regions was a celebration of sorts. After 20 years of dedicated work, he had finally arranged a sabbatical year to pursue his dream of visiting the world's great wilderness areas. This particular morning, Ramon had joined a guided hike through a remote section of the Ecuadorian rainforest. The group consisted of Ramon, 2 other tourists, and their experienced local guide. They had been walking for nearly 3 hours, with the guide pointing out various medicinal plants and wildlife along the established trail. The guide had warned them about the dangers of the rainforest, including the South African bushmaster, locally known as vuragosa or warty snake, due to its distinctive ridged scales. These vipers were masters of camouflage, with their brown and tan patterned bodies blending perfectly with the forest floor. Growing up to 12 feet long, bushmasters were the largest venomous snakes in the Americas and possess a potent hemotoxic venom that destroys tissue and prevents blood clotting. Around midday, the group paused near a small clearing. While the others rested, Ramon noticed a splash of color just off the trail, a rare orchid species he had been hoping to photograph. Without alerting the guide, he stepped carefully off the path, camera in hand, moving toward the base of a large ceiba tree where the orchids grew. Reaching the orchid, Ramon crouched down, adjusting his camera settings to capture the flower's intricate details. Satisfied with his photographs, Ramon prepared to return to the group. As he shifted his weight to stand, his boot disturbed a thick layer of leaf litter near the base of the tree. The South American bushmaster, Lachesis muta, had been perfectly camouflaged among the brown and tan leaf litter. At up to 12 feet long, the bushmaster is the largest pit viper in the Americas, with heat-sensing pits that allow it to detect warm-blooded prey with precision. Despite its size, its pattern of tan and brown scales creates perfect camouflage among fallen leaves. This snake was likely hunting for small mammals that frequented the area. Bushmasters are primarily nocturnal hunters, but this one had remained in its daytime resting spot rather than retreating to a burrow. The bushmaster, disturbed from its resting place, reacted defensively. Before Ramon could process what was happening, the viper struck, driving its fangs deep into his lower leg, just above his hiking boot. The pain was immediate and intense, like 2 hot needles being driven into his calf muscle. Ramon cried out, stumbling backward and falling against a tree trunk. The snake, having delivered its defensive strike, slithered rapidly away into the undergrowth. Ramon's shout alerted the guide, who was at his side within seconds, the rest of the group hanging back in horror. The guide immediately recognized the severity of the situation upon seeing the distinctive bushmaster retreating into the underbrush. Unlike some venomous snakes that deliver dry bites without venom, bushmasters typically injected large amounts of venom with each strike, an evolutionary adaptation for killing prey like rabbits and aguits. The guide applied a pressure bandage and instructed the other tourists to help carry Ramon back toward the trailhead where their boat was docked. Unlike the neurotoxic venoms of cobras or mambas that attack the nervous system, the bushmaster's hemotoxic venom worked by destroying tissue and preventing blood from clotting, a slower but equally deadly mechanism. The effects of the venom manifested within 30 minutes. Ramon's leg had swollen dramatically, with bruising spreading upward from the bite site as blood vessels ruptured beneath the skin. By the 1-hour mark, he was disoriented and struggling to remain conscious as internal bleeding began. His blood pressure dropped dangerously as fluids leaked from his damaged blood vessels. Despite the guide's best effort to reach help quickly, Ramon's condition deteriorated with each passing hour. His breathing became labored and his pulse weakened as the venom circulated through his system. So they made the decision at that critical moment: get Ramon to the hospital as quick as possible. With all the strength they had, they assisted Ramon, carrying him shoulder to shoulder to the river where their only vehicle is located. By the 3-hour mark, they reached the river where their boat was docked. Ramon was barely responsive, his breathing shallow and irregular. Carlos immediately radioed ahead to the medical station, describing Ramon's symptoms and requesting that anti-venom be prepared. The boat journey downriver took another excruciating hour. By the time they reached the medical station, Ramon had lost consciousness completely. The rural clinic had basic anti-venom supplies, but not the specific Bushmaster anti-venom needed for optimal treatment. The doctor administered what they had available, a polyvalent anti-venom designed to work against several pit viper species, while arranging emergency transport to a hospital in Esmeralda City. Despite the medical team's best efforts, Ramon Estevez was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Ramon had succumbed to the venom's effects. The autopsy revealed extensive internal hemorrhaging and tissue necrosis consistent with Bushmaster envenomation. Local authorities used Ramon's case to emphasize the importance of staying on marked trails and always remaining within sight of guides when in snake territory. October 9, 2016 dawned with a brilliant African sunrise, casting golden rays across the vast expanse of Luangwa Valley. The air was thick with humidity, promising another scorching day in the Zambian wilderness. For Dr. Eileen Moravec, this weather was perfect, ideal conditions for the cold-blooded subjects of her research to emerge from their nighttime hideaways. At 39, Eileen had dedicated her entire adult life to understanding the world's most misunderstood creatures. Growing up in a small town outside of Boston, she'd been fascinated by reptiles since finding a garden snake at age 7. While other girls collected dolls, Eileen filled notebooks with sketches of snakes, lizards, and turtles. Her bedroom walls weren't covered with posters of boy bands, but with scientific illustrations of reptile anatomy and distribution maps of venomous species across continents. Her parents had hoped it was just a phase, but by 22, she had graduated with honors in zoology. And by 28, she had earned her doctorate with groundbreaking research on venom evolution in African elapids. The Luangwa Valley Project was her dream assignment, 3 months of field research tracking and documenting the behavior patterns of some of Africa's deadliest snakes. She'd been particularly focused on the black mamba, a species whose reputation for aggression she believed was largely misunderstood. Her preliminary findings suggested that these sleek, lightning-fast predators were actually quite shy and preferred retreat over confrontation when given the option. In the evening before her fatal encounter, Dr. Eileen Moravec had shared her insights with Marcus about black mambas. She passionately explained that these creatures weren't the mindless killers people imagined, but sophisticated predators with complex behaviors. She believed that better understanding these behaviors could save both snake and human lives. Marcus admired Eileen's passion, but worried about her tendency to take calculated risks. She was meticulous about safety protocols, always wearing the proper boots, carrying anti-venom in their field kit, keeping compression bandages at hand. But she also believed that to truly understand these animals, one had to observe them in their natural state, undisturbed and behaving naturally. That morning, Eileen had been particularly excited. Their motion sensor cameras had captured footage of a large black mamba using the same basking site 3 days in a row, a perfect opportunity to observe natural behavior patterns. She packed her field journal, camera, and observation equipment with the careful precision that characterized all her work. The black mamba was Africa's longest venomous snake, capable of reaching lengths of up to 14 feet, though most averaged around 8 feet. Despite their name, they weren't actually black. Their scales ranged from olive to grayish brown. The black referred to the inky color inside their mouths, which they displayed when threatened. What made them particularly dangerous was their combination of highly potent neurotoxic venom and speed, capable of moving up to 12.5 miles per hour in short bursts. Following established protocol, Eileen and Marcus approached the basking site together, maintaining visual contact at all times. The site was a small clearing with a fallen log that had been rotting for years, creating the perfect micro-habitat for a variety of creatures. Eileen knelt beside the log, her movements slow and deliberate, while Marcus remained close by with their field kit open and ready. After several minutes of careful observation, Eileen saw no signs of the mamba. Following standard field procedures, she used her snake hook to gently lift a section of loose bark on the log, probing cautiously before each movement. What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. As Eileen carefully lifted the bark, Marcus, standing just a few feet away, caught a flash of movement so quick it seemed almost like a trick of light. The black mamba, concealed in a hollow beneath the bark, erupted from its hiding place with explosive force. The snake's sleek body launched upward like a coiled spring releasing, its head moving faster than the human eye could track. Its mouth gaped open, revealing the characteristic black interior that gave the species its name, a glimpse of darkness that would be the last thing many victims ever saw. The first strike caught Eileen on her forearm, just above her protective glove. The mamba's fangs, nearly a quarter-inch long, penetrated her skin with surgical precision, injecting venom directly into her tissue. Eileen gasped, more from surprise than immediate pain, and instinctively pulled back her arm. This defensive movement triggered the mamba's second strike. The snake, now fully in defensive mode, targeted the exposed skin at Eileen's waist, where her field shirt had risen slightly. The fang sank deep, delivering a second dose of neurotoxic venom that would prove fatal. Marcus lunged forward with his snake hook, but the mamba had already retreated back into the log's recesses, its attack complete in less than 2 seconds. Eileen remained kneeling. She looked down at her arm where 2 small puncture wounds were already beginning to weep tiny beads of blood. A similar pair of punctures marked her side. The venom began its work immediately, though the full effects wouldn't be apparent for several minutes. Black mamba venom contains potent neurotoxins that attack the nervous system, gradually shutting down neural pathways and eventually leading to respiratory paralysis. Unlike some venoms that cause immediate excruciating pain, mamba venom's initial subtlety belies its deadly efficiency. When the emergency struck, Marcus implemented their emergency protocol while Eileen, still conscious, guided her own first aid procedures. Her hands remained steady as she directed Marcus to apply the pressure bandages, her scientific mind still functioning with remarkable clarity despite knowing what was coming. Marcus contacted emergency services via satellite phone, which connected successfully. He administered their field anti-venom kit, standard procedure for researchers working with highly venomous species in remote locations. Despite these prompt measures, the double bite from a large mamba had delivered a massive venom dose. Within 30 minutes, Eileen began experiencing the progressive symptoms of mamba envenomation, tingling around the bite sites, followed by increasing difficulty swallowing and a heaviness in her limbs as the neurotoxins began affecting her nervous system. The emergency helicopter arrived 50 minutes after the bite, by which time Eileen was experiencing significant respiratory distress as the neurotoxins affected her diaphragm. The medical team administered additional antivenom and placed her on ventilator support, but the venom's effects were advancing rapidly through her system. Throughout the emergency flight to the regional hospital, Eileen remained conscious, although the neurotoxins were gradually paralyzing her respiratory muscles. Despite maximum medical intervention, including multiple doses of antivenom and medical ventilation, she succumbed to her respiratory failure approximately 4 hours after the bite. The morning of May 14, 2022 began with heavy rain pounding the windows of Devon Blakely's suburban home on Australia's Gold Coast. The 29-year-old exotic snake owner had planned to spend the day maintaining his collection, a hobby that consumed his life for the past 7 years. Devon was known throughout the reptile enthusiast community for his extensive knowledge and growing collection of venomous species. Friends described him as meticulous about safety, always emphasizing proper handling techniques to fellow collectors. His pride and joy was a room specifically converted for housing his collection, a temperature-controlled space with reinforced doors and specialized enclosures for over a dozen venomous snakes. Among them was his newest acquisition, an inland taipan. The inland taipan possesses venom 50 times more toxic than that of a cobra. A single bite contains enough venom to kill 100 adult humans, with its cocktail of neurotoxins, hemotoxins, and myotoxins attacking multiple body systems simultaneously. In the wild, these snakes are actually shy and reclusive, rarely encountering humans in their remote desert habitat. His girlfriend always worried that he may go too far with his collection, but she couldn't stop him, eventually letting him have his freedom in these animals. She convinced herself that Devon was experienced enough to know how to handle these reptiles. Devon had been waiting for months for the proper permits to keep this particular species, and he had only received the snake 2 weeks prior. The inland taipan, also known as the fierce snake, was paradoxically known for its shy, reclusive nature in the wild. Despite possessing the world's most potent venom, these snakes rarely encountered humans in their remote desert habitat in central East Australia. Obtaining the proper permits for keeping such a dangerous species had been a bureaucratic nightmare. Devon had completed specialized handling courses, installed additional security measures, and submitted to regular inspections. The final piece, a supply of specific taipan antivenom to keep on site, was still caught in red tape. The Wildlife Authority had promised it would be delivered within the week, but Devon couldn't wait to begin working with his new prize. That rainy Saturday morning, Devon's girlfriend went grocery shopping while he went on with cleaning the snake enclosure. Devon entered his snake room to perform routine maintenance. He was particularly careful with the taipan enclosure, using a snake hook as he'd done countless times before. But professional handlers know that taipans should never be manipulated with hooks alone. The proper procedure involves guiding them into clear tubes where they can be safely contained without directly handling. But Devon, perhaps overconfident from his years of experience with other species, attempted to guide the taipan with just his hook. He carefully opened the enclosure, snake hook in his right hand, clear acrylic shield in his left, standard safety protocol. The taipan was hiding in its favorite spot, beneath a small artificial cave. Devon gently touched the snake's midsection with his hook, intending to guide it into the temporary container. The taipan, however, had other ideas. With the explosive speed characteristic of its species, the snake shot forward, not toward the container, but along the edge of the enclosure. Devon reacted quickly, adjusting his hook to redirect the animal, but in doing so, he momentarily lowered his acrylic shield. It was all the opening the taipan needed. The snake launched itself upward with incredible precision, sailing past the hook and striking Devon's exposed wrist just below his protective glove. The fangs sank deep, delivering a massive dose of venom before Devon could even register what had happened. The feeding schedule indicated the taipan was due for a meal, and Devon prepared accordingly, knowing that hungry snakes were often more aggressive. What happened next was pieced together from the scene discovered later. While manipulating the enclosure, Devon apparently misjudged the taipan's position. The snake, quick and agile despite its typically calm demeanor, evaded the hook and struck, sinking its fangs into Devon's wrist between his protective glove and sleeve. Following his emergency protocols, Devon attempted first aid, applying a pressure bandage to the bite site. He had been waiting for a specialized anti-venom delivery that had been delayed due to licensing requirements. Without this crucial antidote on hand, Devon's situation quickly became dire. The inland taipan's venom was primarily neurotoxic, but also contains powerful hemotoxins and myotoxins. Unlike the black mamba's fast-acting neurotoxins, the taipan's venom typically took longer to manifest severe symptoms, usually 2 to 6 hours without treatment. This gave victims a larger window for medical intervention, but once symptoms progressed, the outcome was equally fatal. His girlfriend, returning from shopping approximately 30 minutes after the bite occurred, found Devon collapsed on the floor of the snake room, already showing signs of envenomation. His breathing was labored and he was experiencing intense abdominal pain, early symptoms of taipan envenomation. She immediately called emergency services. The paramedics arrived within 12 minutes of the call, remarkably fast. But the taipan venom worked faster. The paramedics worked efficiently, establishing an IV, administering oxygen, and preparing him for immediate transport. They confirmed what Devon already knew. They didn't carry taipan antivenom. It would be waiting at the hospital, they assured him. Devon Blakely was pronounced dead at Gold Coast University Hospital approximately 3 hours after the bite. The taipan antivenom arrived by helicopter 20 minutes after his death, a cruel timing that haunted Melissa for years afterward. It was March 15, 2014, in a modest apartment complex on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, when tragedy struck in the most unexpected way. The desert city's temperatures have begun their seasonal climb, with daytime highs reaching the mid-80s. Inside Unit 2B of the Seguro Gardens complex, the air conditioning hummed steadily against the warm spring air. David Hernandez, a 34-year-old software engineer, had called this cramped 2-bedroom apartment home for only 3 months. The recent move from his spacious house had been necessitated by financial constraints following a company layoff, forcing him to downsize significantly. David's most prized possession wasn't his computer equipment or gaming setup, but rather his 8-year companion Samson, a magnificent 14-foot Burmese python weighing 160 pounds. The massive serpent had been David's constant companion since purchasing him as a juvenile, and their bond had grown remarkably strong over the years. David treated Samson more like a beloved pet dog than a potentially dangerous reptile, often allowing the python to roam freely throughout his living space during their evening interactions. The smaller apartment had created noticeable stress for both David and his scaled companion, as Samson's massive enclosure now dominated the cramped living room, leaving little space for normal activities. Burmese pythons rank among the world's largest snake species, native to Southeast Asia, but increasingly common in the exotic pet trade. These powerful constrictors possess incredible strength, capable of exerting pressure exceeding 85 pounds per square inch when wrapping around prey. Their hunting instincts remain deeply ingrained, movement and vibration. Adult Burmese pythons typically feed on mammals ranging from rabbits to deer in their natural habitat, using their muscular coils to suffocate prey before swallowing it whole. On that fateful evening, David arrived home at 8 o'clock after a particularly exhausting day debugging software code. Following his established routine, he opened Samson's enclosure and gently coaxed the massive python onto the living room floor for their daily bonding session. David settled onto his worn leather couch, remote in hand, as Samson began his methodical exploration of the familiar territory. The python's thick body moved with surprising grace along the carpet, tongue flicking constantly to sample the air for chemical information. As the evening progressed, David's eyelids grew heavy from the day's mental fatigue. Around 10:30, he dozed off while watching a late-night show, his breathing settling into the deep, rhythmic pattern of sleep. Samson, drawn by the warmth radiating from David's body, slowly approached the couch. The python's heat-sensing organs detected the inviting temperature differential, and his instincts guided him toward this source of comfort. The massive snake began wrapping his muscular coils around David's sleeping form, initially seeking nothing more than warmth and security. However, as David's chest rose and fell with each breath, the subtle movement triggered Samson's deeply embedded predatory responses. The python's brain interpreted the rhythmic motion as signs of struggling prey, activating its constricting instincts with devastating efficiency. Samson's coils tightened incrementally with each of David's exhales, following the ancient pattern encoded in his DNA. The snake's powerful muscles contracted systematically, applying crushing pressure to David's torso and neck. David awakened to find himself trapped within the living bands of muscle, unable to draw breath or cry for help. Each attempt to exhale allowed Samson to constrict tighter, creating a horrifying feedback loop. The python's coils compressed David's rib cage with relentless force, generating pressure that exceeded the structural limits of human bone. Multiple ribs cracked audibly under the tremendous strain, puncturing lung tissue and causing internal bleeding. Simultaneously, Samson's coils around David's neck compressed both corroded arteries, cutting off blood flow to his brain while crushing his windpipe completely. David's vision darkened as oxygen deprivation took hold, his struggles growing weaker with each passing second. The combination of mechanical asphyxiation and circulatory collapse proved insurmountable. Within 6 minutes of the constriction beginning, David lost consciousness permanently. His heart ceased beating shortly thereafter, unable to function under the crushing pressure that had compressed his chest cavity beyond recognition. 2 days passed before concerned co-workers contacted building management about David's absence. Maintenance personnel discovered the horrific scene, finding Samson still coiled protectively around David's lifeless body. The python showed no signs of aggression toward the responding officers, having simply followed his natural instincts without malicious intent. The incident prompted renewed discussions about exotic pet ownership regulations in Arizona, though no criminal charges were filed given the accidental nature of the tragedy. David's family requested privacy during their grieving process, while animal control safety removed Samson to a specialized reptile sanctuary. David Hernandez's death prompted renewed discussions about exotic pet ownership regulations. But even as authorities worked to prevent future tragedies, Dr. Amanda Foster was preparing for field research in remote Queensland, unaware of the dangers ahead. It was August 7, 2015, in the remote scrublands of Queensland, Australia, where the harsh outback stretched endlessly under a blazing afternoon sun. The temperature had reached 38 degrees Celsius, creating shimmering heat waves that distorted the horizon. The landscape was unforgiving, with dense thickets of acacia and eucalyptus creating a maze of shadows and hiding spots perfect for Australia's most dangerous reptiles. Red dirt paths wound through the scrubland, marked only by the occasional tire tracks of research vehicles and the scattered bones of long-dead cattle. Dr. Amanda Foster, a 41-year-old herpetologist with 18 years of experience studying venomous snakes, had ventured into this isolated terrain alone, carrying her field equipment in a weather canvas backpack. She was considered an expert on Australian elapids, having published research papers and safely handled over 500 venomous snakes throughout her distinguished career. Her methodical approach and unwavering dedication had earned her international recognition from institutions across 3 continents. Dr. Foster was conducting critical field research for a groundbreaking anti-venom development project, having recently discovered a new population of inland taipans in this remote Queensland location. The discovery had the potential to revolutionize snakebite treatment protocols worldwide. Her research partner was scheduled to join her the following day, but her eagerness to document this rare find and collect preliminary specimens had driven her to work alone, a decision that would prove fatal. The inland taipan, known scientifically as Oxyuranus microlepidus, holds the deadly distinction of being the world's most venomous land snake. A single bite contains enough neurotoxic venom to kill 100 adult humans within 45 minutes, making it 50 times more toxic than a king cobra. These serpents typically measure between 6 to 8 feet in length and possess a deceptively calm demeanor that masks their lethal capabilities. Their venom contains a complex cocktail of neurotoxins, hemotoxins, and myotoxins that work in devastating harmony to shut down vital bodily functions. At 1:45 p.m., Dr. Foster located a magnificent 7-foot male specimen coiled beneath the fallen log, its body perfectly camouflaged against the dried vegetation. She approached with her standard equipment, a 5-foot capture hook, and a clear acrylic tube designed for safe specimen collection. The taipan appeared docile as she carefully maneuvered it toward the capture tube, its bronze-colored scales gleaming in the filtered sunlight. The snake's head swayed gently as she guided it with practiced precision, following protocol she had executed hundreds of times before. During the final positioning phase, her hook slipped on loose bark, creating a sudden jarring motion that startled the snake. The taipan's response was instantaneous and devastating. It struck with lightning speed, covering the distance in a fraction of a second, its hollow fangs penetrating her wrist just above her protective glove, where a small gap existed between the leather and her sleeve. The snake delivered 55 milligrams of the world's most potent neurotoxin directly into her bloodstream through its quarter-inch fangs. Dr. Foster immediately applied a compression bandage with trembling hands and began the grueling 2-mile trek back to her vehicle, knowing that time was her greatest enemy and that every second counted in her fight for survival. Within 15 minutes of envenomation, muscle weakness began manifesting in her hands as the neurotoxin systematically attacked her nervous system. Her vision became increasingly blurred as acetylcholine receptors throughout her body were methodically blocked by the venom's deadly compounds. The toxin spread through her lymphatic system, targeting nerve endings with surgical precision. Dr. Foster's coordination deteriorated rapidly as the venom reached her spinal cord, causing her legs to buckle beneath her weight. She collapsed 800 meters from her truck, her body convulsing as paralysis spread relentlessly through her extremities. Her breathing became labored and irregular as the neurotoxin attacked her brainstem, disrupting the automatic functions that sustained life. Her diaphragm muscles ceased functioning as the toxin reached critical neural pathways, causing complete respiratory failure. The final stages were swift and merciless as her cardiovascular system began shutting down. She died from total respiratory paralysis exactly 52 minutes after the bite. Her body was discovered the following morning by a research partner during their planned rendezvous. The incident prompted an immediate investigation by Queensland's Department of Environment and Heritage Protection, while the international herpetological community mourned the loss of one of their most respected members. Dr. Foster's death reminded the world that even experts aren't safe from nature's deadliest predators. Meanwhile, in Miami, Carlos Martinez was preparing for his nightly snake feeding ritual, unaware of the fatal mistake ahead. It was November 22, 2016, in a modest two-bedroom house nestled within a quiet residential neighborhood in Miami, Florida. The humid evening air hung thick and oppressive around the palm-lined streets, where flickering streetlights cast long shadows across cracked sidewalks. Inside the cramped dwelling on Coral Way, Carlos Martinez had transformed his living space into something far from ordinary. The 28-year-old warehouse supervisor had methodically converted his master bedroom into an elaborate serpentarium, housing 23 illegal venomous snakes in custom-built glass enclosures that lined every available wall space from floor to ceiling. Carlos had spent the better part of 5 years cultivating his dangerous obsession with deadly reptiles, meticulously researching species and building specialized habitats. His reckless confidence had grown exponentially with each successful handling session, as he gradually dismissed the safety protocols that other experienced herpetologists considered absolutely essential for survival. He genuinely believed he possessed an almost mystical connection with these lethal creatures, often spending hours each day handling his collection without any protective equipment whatsoever. Recently, he had acquired what he considered his ultimate prize, a massive eastern diamondback rattlesnake imported illegally from East Texas, measuring an impressive 6 feet in length and weighing nearly 8 pounds of pure predatory power. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake stands as North America's largest and most formidable venomous serpent, capable of delivering up to 400 milligrams of incredibly potent hemotoxic venom in a single devastating bite. These apex predators possess specialized heat-sensing pits located between their eyes and nostrils that can detect the slightest temperature variations from warm-blooded prey with deadly precision. Their distinctive diamond-patterned scales, ranging from gray to brown with darker borders, provides perfect camouflage in their natural habitat, while their muscular bodies can strike at speeds reaching 8 feet per second. At precisely 9:15 p.m., Carlos entered his converted bedroom sanctuary, carrying a freshly thawed dead rat for his evening feeding routine. The familiar musty scent of multiple snake enclosures filled the stagnant air as he approached his prize rattlesnake's specially designed habitat. The massive serpent lay coiled in the corner, its thick body forming perfect loops while its distinctive rattle remained motionless. Instead of using the proper 18-inch feeding tongs that sat unused on his dresser, Carlos made the fatal decision to open the enclosure and reach directly inside with his bare hand, completely convinced that his imagined bond with the serpent would somehow protect him from harm. The massive diamondback, already heightened into feeding mode by the scent of prey, immediately detected the warm human presence entering its carefully maintained territory. Without any warning whatsoever, the snake's powerful muscular body uncoiled with explosive force and struck forward with lightning speed. Both razor-sharp fangs penetrated deep into the soft flesh of Carlos's palm, injecting approximately 380 milligrams of concentrated hemotoxic venom directly into his bloodstream. As he instinctively jerked his hand back in shock, the puncture wounds tore significantly larger, creating gaping holes that allowed even more deadly venom to course rapidly through his circulatory system. Stubbornly refusing to acknowledge the severity of his deteriorating situation, Carlos attempted to continue his feeding routine with his remaining 22 snakes. Within exactly 10 minutes, excruciating pain began radiating up his entire arm as massive swelling commenced at the bite site. The potent venom immediately began its systematic destruction of blood vessels and surrounding tissue, turning his hand a sickening purplish black color that spread rapidly up his forearm. Overwhelming nausea struck him as the hemotoxins launched their devastating attack on his circulatory system, causing his blood pressure to plummet to dangerously low levels. Carlos stumbled desperately toward the narrow hallway, frantically trying to reach his cell phone charging on the kitchen counter, but his weakening legs suddenly gave out completely beneath his falling body. He collapsed heavily onto the hardwood floor as massive internal bleeding began simultaneously throughout multiple organ systems. The circulating venom systematically broke down his blood's natural ability to form clots, causing uncontrolled hemorrhaging in his liver, kidneys, and brain. For 4 agonizing hours, Carlos lay completely helpless on the cold floor as his body methodically shut down from severe hemorrhagic shock and cascading organ failure. His breathing became increasingly labored and shallow until it finally ceased entirely in the early morning hours of November 23rd. 3 days later, his concerned landlord discovered Carlos's badly decomposing body after multiple neighbors complained about a horrific foul odor emanating from the property. Miami-Dade police found the extensive illegal snake collection still contained within their enclosures, leading to a comprehensive investigation by Florida wildlife authorities. Carlos's devastated family expressed complete shock at the dangerous extent of his secret hobby, having no prior knowledge of the lethal reptiles he had been keeping. Carlos Martinez's death prompted new regulations on exotic pet ownership in Miami. But even as authorities worked to prevent future snake tragedies, 12-year-old Lily Johnson was preparing for her family's annual desert camping trip, unaware of the dangers ahead. It was June 3, 2017, in the sprawling Sonoran Desert of Arizona, where towering saguaro cacti cast long shadows across the rugged terrain. The morning sun painted the desert landscape in golden hues as the Johnson family prepared for their annual hiking adventure on the Desert Discovery Trail. This remote wilderness area, known for its diverse wildlife and challenging terrain, had become their traditional summer destination over the past 3 years. 12-year-old Lily Johnson bounced with excitement as she adjusted her hiking boots, her adventurous spirit evident in every movement. Her father, Michael, a 45-year-old experienced outdoorsman and amateur photographer, carefully checked their supplies while scanning the horizon for potential wildlife shots. Jennifer, 42, worked as a pediatric nurse and methodically packed her medical kit, a habit that had become second nature during their family expeditions. Tyler, Lily's 16-year-old brother and accomplished Eagle Scout, reviewed their planned route with the confidence that came from extensive wilderness first aid training. The family had conquered this particular trail system 5 times previously, making them familiar with its challenges and beauty. The Desert Discovery Trail wound through dense desert scrub, past ancient Palo Verde trees, and over rocky outcroppings that offered spectacular views of the surrounding wilderness. However, the very familiarity that gave them confidence also bred a subtle complacency about the hidden dangers lurking in this pristine environment. The western diamondback rattlesnake represents one of North America's most formidable venomous serpents, capable of reaching lengths up to 7 feet and possessing a potent cocktail of cytotoxic and hemotoxic venom. These apex predators have evolved perfect camouflage that renders them nearly invisible among desert vegetation, particularly beneath the dappled shade of Palo Verde trees. Their defensive strike can deliver up to 400 milligrams of venom in a single bite, though even smaller doses prove lethal without immediate medical intervention. At precisely 7 a.m., the Johnson family began their morning trek along the familiar trail. The desert air remained cool and crisp, perfect conditions for their planned 4-hour expedition. Lily chatted enthusiastically about her upcoming 7th grade year, while Tyler pointed out various desert plants and animal tracks. Michael paused frequently to capture photographs of the stunning landscape, while Jennifer monitored their pace and hydration levels. At 9:30 a.m., disaster struck with sudden, terrifying swiftness. Lily accidentally fumbled her water bottle, watching helplessly as it rolled 15 feet off the marked trail into dense desert scrub. Without hesitation or warning to her family, she quickly stepped off the established path to retrieve the essential item. Her hiking boots crunched softly on the desert floor as she navigated between thorny ocotillo plants and scattered rocks. Beneath a mature Palo Verde tree, perfectly camouflaged among fallen leaves and desert debris, a 5-foot western diamondback rattlesnake lay coiled in a defensive position. The massive serpent had been resting in the cool shade when Lily's approaching footsteps triggered its survival instincts. As she stepped directly over the hidden predator, the rattlesnake struck her with lightning speed, its fangs penetrating completely through her hiking boot and deep into her ankle. The snake's hollow fangs delivered approximately 180 milligrams of potent venom directly into Lily's bloodstream. She screamed in shock and pain, stumbling backward toward the trail where her family rushed to her aid with growing alarm. Michael immediately recognized the distinctive puncture wounds and quickly applied a compression bandage while Tyler frantically dialed 911 on their satellite phone. The cytotoxic venom began its devastating work immediately, destroying muscle tissue and blood vessels around the bite site. Lily's ankle swelled rapidly as the toxic proteins spread through her lymphatic system. Jennifer monitored her daughter's vital signs while the family began speed hiking toward their vehicle, located 1.5 miles away through increasingly difficult terrain. As they struggled toward safety, the venom continued its relentless assault on Lily's body. Nausea and dizziness overwhelmed her as the toxins entered her bloodstream, causing her blood pressure to drop dangerously. Tyler maintained constant communication with emergency services while supporting his weakening sister. After 45 grueling minutes of hiking, Lily lost consciousness just as they reached their car. During the helicopter evacuation, tissue death began spreading up her leg as the venom's cytotoxic effects accelerated. Despite receiving anti-venom treatment at the trauma center, the remote location had delayed critical medical intervention by 3.5 hours. Lily Johnson died from systemic organ failure as her family watched helplessly. Their annual adventure transformed into an unthinkable tragedy. The incident prompted a thorough investigation by park authorities, who determined that the snake had acted defensively when threatened. The Johnson family requested privacy during their grief, though they later advocated for improved trail safety education. While Lily's death highlighted the dangers of stepping off trails, marathon runner Thomas Wilson would soon learn that even familiar paths offer no safety from a small serpent whose deadly bite proves size means nothing. It was September 14, 2018, in the sprawling wilderness of Everglades National Park, Florida. The pre-dawn air hung thick with humidity as mist drifted between towering cypress trees and sawgrass prairies. Ancient waterways carved through the landscape, creating a maze of trails that wound deep into America's most mysterious wetland. This morning, like countless others, would witness the disciplined routine of a dedicated runner who had made these paths his sanctuary. Thomas Wilson, a 45-year-old insurance adjuster from Miami, had built his life around precision and routine. For 3 years, he'd conquered the same 6-mile circuit through the Everglades, using his morning runs as preparation for marathon competitions. His colleagues knew him as the man who never missed a workout, arriving at the office each day with the satisfied exhaustion of someone who had already conquered his first challenge before sunrise. Thomas preferred the solitude of natural trails over crowded city sidewalks, finding peace in the symphony of awakening wildlife that accompanied his footsteps. With the Miami Marathon approaching, he had been steadily increasing his weekly mileage, pushing his endurance to new limits. The familiar trail had become his proving ground, a place where he tested his resolve against the unforgiving Florida wilderness. The eastern coral snake represents one of North America's most venomous serpents, despite its deceptively small size and reclusive nature. Growing to lengths of 2 to 4 feet, this elusive reptile possesses a neurotoxic venom capable of causing complete respiratory paralysis in humans. Unlike aggressive species, coral snakes typically bite only when directly contacted or threatened. Their small fangs and reluctant nature often lead victims to underestimate the severity of envenomation, as initial symptoms may be delayed or subtle. The snake's distinctive red, yellow, and black banded pattern serves as nature's warning system, though encounters remain rare due to their secretive underground lifestyle. At 5:45 a.m., Thomas began his run in near complete darkness, his feet finding their familiar rhythm on the packed earth trail. The decision to explore a new trail extension proved fateful, as he ventured beyond his established route into unfamiliar territory. Without a flashlight to illuminate the path ahead, he relied entirely on muscle memory and the faint outline of the trail beneath his feet. At 6:15 a.m., his right foot landed squarely on what felt like a thick branch crossing the narrow path. The object beneath his shoe was actually a 3-foot eastern coral snake that had been crossing from one side of the trail to the other. The sudden pressure triggered an immediate defensive response as the snake's small fangs penetrated through his running tights and into his calf muscle. The bite delivered approximately 15 milligrams of potent neurotoxin directly into his bloodstream, though Thomas felt only a brief sharp sensation that he dismissed as a thorn scratch. He continued running without pause, unaware that deadly venom was already beginning to circulate through his system. After 20 minutes, mild numbness developed in his bitten leg, which he attributed to normal fatigue from his increased training regimen. Thomas completed his full 6-mile circuit and drove home, his body showing no obvious signs of the envenomation that was silently progressing. While showering, muscle weakness and difficulty swallowing began to manifest as the neurotoxic venom attacked his nervous system. He collapsed in his kitchen as the toxins paralyzed crucial nerve pathways, causing his speech to become slurred and his vision to double. Respiratory muscles began failing as the venom systematically blocked nerve transmission throughout his body. Thomas managed to dial 911 but could barely speak coherently to the emergency dispatcher, his words becoming increasingly garbled. Paramedics discovered him in severe respiratory distress with dilated pupils and complete muscle paralysis. Despite immediate medical intervention, Thomas died from complete respiratory failure while being transported to the hospital, his body unable to maintain basic life functions. The Everglades National Park launched an immediate investigation into the incident, temporarily closing the trail section where the attack occurred. Thomas's family expressed shock that such a routine activity could result in tragedy, emphasizing his extensive experience running in natural environments. The medical examiner's autopsy revealed the coral snake bite on his calf, confirming the cause of death as neurotoxic envenomation. Park officials reminded visitors about the importance of proper lighting and awareness when traversing wilderness areas during low visibility conditions. Just when you think you've witnessed the most terrifying encounters with nature's deadliest snakes, click the next video now for more shocking animal attack stories that will keep you on edge.